Hello and welcome to Freshwaves. I'm your host, Bren Masson. Today we have a really cool guest. This is a guy who right now does scanning of photographs and slides and all kinds of old stuff so that you have current records and can put the things in your computer, and we'll talk all about that. But he used to be a mascot. I don't know anyone who can honestly say that they know someone who used to be a mascot. Anyway, our guest today is Russ Horner. And hello, Russ. Thanks for joining us here on Fresh Waves.
Hello, Bren. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here today with you.
Well, I'm really intrigued. I mean, I found you because I was looking online for someone close by to scan some old photographs I have. My father passed away about 5 years ago, and we just sold the family cottage. And somehow, all of our family photos and records ended up at the family cottage. Some of them have been a little damaged from being in a basement for the last 6 or 7 years. Others of them are, I have a picture that is probably almost 2 feet wide and has been rolled up for about 50 years or more.
Yeah.
And I thought, I've heard from a lot of my friends that they went to big box stores, handed over all the family treasures, and came back in 2 weeks and had a disc. I also heard of people who were sending their stuff down to the United States. And right now, with the border the way it is, I didn't think that was a really great idea. I wasn't comfortable doing that. So I really did go out of my way to find someone local that I could use. And you weren't the first person I called, but you were the first person who called me back.
Very good. Lucky me.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, I'm so glad that I did because I'm intrigued by what you do. So how do you end up being a mascot? Let's start there because I think that was your first career, and we'll start at the beginning.
Okay, yeah, it pretty well was my first career. I grew up in Maple, practically right beside Canada's Wonderland, and I also grew up with Saturday morning cartoons and other animated live people such as Red Skelton and Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, people like those. And anyway, Wonderland was being built very close to where I lived, and 2 years before it opened, I applied to be a clown. And I walked on their property, which was dirt, and a little trailer, which was their entertainment department at the time. And they told me that they don't have clowns, but in a few months, they were going to bring up from the States, one of Canada's Wonderland's sister parks, Kings Island in Cincinnati. They were going to bring up Fred Flintstone, Yogi Bear, and Scooby-Doo. And they showed me a picture of Fred Flintstone on stage with the Cincinnati Reds baseball team. And I said, that I have to do that. That is a dream come true. And I really, in those early days, I felt like I was a movie star portraying one of the movie stars that I saw on Saturday morning, every Saturday morning. So it really, everything started at Wonderland. And before the park opened, they trained me. They sent me down to a number of the theme parks in the eastern United States, all Hanna-Barbera, to learn how to run character programs for theme parks. And so the first year the park opened in 1981, I was the character supervisor. So my job was to hire and train all of the characters in the park. And that's really how it got started in 1981.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you were in high school, did you take theater arts? Were you interested in that kind of thing, in performing?
Well, I was actually, but I used to really love people like Red Skelton and the silent movie stars and the Three Stooges, all that very silly slapstick kind of thing. And I did do some shows in high school, but and I did love to sing as well. So I was a bit of a performer, but nothing too serious. But really, when the characters came along, that first interview at Wonderland, I was in hook, line, and sinker for sure. And so I was at Wonderland for two seasons. And in 1983, I was in my third year of university, and that's when I started my business, the Great Character Company. And that's when I started to market these services of managing characters and mascots for companies and organizations. So that's when the business started, very early on in university. But Wonderland gave me that start, no doubt about it. I got into stage management as well, and management of the live shows in the Happy Land of Hanna-Barbera, and then Atmosphere Entertainment, and then went to Kingswood Music Theater. But throughout my whole career, my character mascot life has stuck with me. No matter what I did in my career, I always had a role in some way with characters and mascots. It has just stuck with me this whole time. But the business started in '83. That specific business started in '83. My first contract was as Sesqui the Squirrel with.
Who the heck is that?
Sesqui the Squirrel was the mascot for Toronto's Sesquicentennial celebration.
Oh, I see.
And we had 2 squirrel costumes, and in 14 months we did 720 appearances. I hired a staff of 6, and I did I think about 400 of those 700 appearances. And yeah, it was a great start to the business, that's for sure, by having that 14-month contract.
So you get into this costume, you've got this massive head. Where do you see out of? Because I know people are, for a little kid, I don't want to spoil their effect, but in the same sense, the listening audience is usually more than 5 years old. So, say the turtle here, Dahmer or whatever his name is.
Dahmer the turtle, yes.
Yep. Are you looking out from underneath his chin?
No, all of the costumes are quite different, and I think over the years, and I think one of the reasons why I felt I was successful in managing a number of big contracts with Wrigley's, Canadian Tire, Molson's, the Vancouver Olympic and Paralympic Games, McDonald's with Ronald McDonald. Part of the reason why I was successful is because I wore a lot of different kinds of costumes. I figured about 100 different costumes over the years, made by all different kinds of people, and they set them up all differently. So Dahmer, the turtle, so I was on contract with Sky Dome in Toronto to be Dahmer the turtle, and I was on contract with the Toronto Argonauts to be Scully, the Toronto Argonauts mascot. But Dahmer the turtle, I could see out of his mouth.
Oh, I see.
So that's where Dahmer could see out of. Whereas Scully, the Argos mascot, I could see out of his eyes.
Oh.
But right out of his eyes.
So he wasn't very tall.
Scully was not very tall. No, he wasn't really that tall. No. Dahmer was quite tall, but Dahmer the turtle just had a ton of toy appeal. He was kind of roly-poly, and you could animate him quite easily, and everyone liked Dahmer quite a bit. He was just a very cute-looking turtle, and in costume form, he was very good, very approachable, very nice and kind and friendly and fluffy and that type of thing. He was good.
Now, how do you handle the kids? Because kids are going to come up to you and they want to hug you. They want you to hug them. It must be a little tricky when you're training people, because there's some people who really are not cut out for this. I've come across many mannequins. They're, mascots in my day who kind of stand off from the kids, or they've got bodyguards in front of them and things like that. And you're thinking, really, aren't these supposed to be the approachable characters? But I guess you're only approachable to a point.
You are, and that's a really, really great question. And some people think that when you get into costume, you can do anything you want because no one can see your face, so you can do anything you want. But the bottom line is, and again, this was one of the things with especially the Olympic Games. With the Olympic Games, we had 69 costumes, and I had a full-time volunteer staff of 120 and 4 coordinators. It was a huge program, but the number one thing in any character program or mascot program is not the performer inside or not the look of the costume, but it is all about safety. Number one is safety, because inside a costume, you can't hear properly, you can't see properly, you don't have peripheral vision, you're hot, you're sweaty, you have oversized hands, you've got oversized and sometimes very heavy feet. You can really hurt somebody. And I've had my share of accidents over the years. There's no question about it. But safety's number one. And how you approach children and even adults. There was one lady at the Olympic Games that was petrified, absolutely petrified of characters and mascots. And she said to me, um, whenever we had an event at the Olympic office, she would always say, Russ, we have this event today. Are the mascots going to be there? And she would say, don't have them come near me. And I said, I know. I know. We definitely will not do that. So you're absolutely right. How you approach not just kids, but adults, people with disabilities, seniors, you have to treat everyone. You have to. I always had the trick of and trained this way. When someone approaches you or you see somebody, look at them right in the eyes, and that will gauge your next move. For kids, the simple tricks are try and get down low so that you're not towering over them. Do not bring them close to you. Do not you can put your arms around them, let's say, and tap them on the back, but don't bring them tightly in close to you. Let them hug you, because the costumes are huge. So, like you said, the heads are huge, your feet are huge. You can bend their backs forward. You can actually injure them by just giving them a simple hug. So we always had a rule: let the kids do all the hugging. Let them grab your arms. Don't bring them in close to you. Put your arms around them, but just maybe tap them on the back and things like that. So safety was always number one, and certainly how we approach children. And success for us as characters and mascots was always, you might get a really nice hug. You might get a child take your hand and say, come and meet my parents and things like that. But you might also get those really scared children, and adults for that matter, who don't want to come near you. But from 30 feet away, they'll give you a nice little wave, and that's success. You've done your job as a character or mascot if you're able to get even a simple wave. So yeah, a lot of thought goes into it.
Oh, I can imagine it would.
A lot of sweat comes out, but a lot of emotions and thought go into each move for sure.
Now, when you're doing these characters, they're already usually larger than life in that they're quite big, they're quite cumbersome. When you see pictures of an average size human standing beside these mascots, they can be tall, they can be wide. And when I do theater training with people and we talk about your stage presence and how a small gesture that you would do between friends at a cafe won't work if you're standing on the stage. You've got to make that gesture exaggerated so the people in the back row can see what you're doing. And it feels unnatural to you, but it looks natural to the people behind. And let me tell you, there are good mascots and there are really bad mascots. And spend a week at Disneyland and you'll see, oh my goodness. I mean, there's some of them where the kids are just like, he was really mean, Mommy. Or, she was just a real princess. Yeah. And, those are the people that are really doing a great job. But how does it feel inside the costume? Because you must, everything you do has to be exaggerated.
Yeah, so great points, and a couple things about being on stage, and people that are new, they want to be characters or mascots, and when I would train them, I coined the term the puppet principle, and basically what that is I tried to get the performers to imagine they were almost like a marionette. Puppet with strings, and really whenever your leg goes up or your foot goes up, people see that, and so you want to pretend anything you do, your body is basically the hand in a puppet, and everything you do shows up. The larger you do it safely, the more it shows up. And any of my photos, if you see photos, and I have thousands and thousands of photos and videos, but almost every one of them. If there's a picture taken of me or perhaps anyone I've trained, you will always see either one arm out and one foot up or one toe pointed up in the air. You're just not standing there. So you're absolutely right. You need to work at bringing the characters to life, and even at the Olympic Games, this is part safety and part bringing the character to life. But we had several days of training, not just in front of not just PowerPoint type training, but and video training. But I did obstacle courses with imagine 69 people dressed up in 69 costumes doing obstacle courses inside an empty office complex. They were going up and down stairs and just getting used to things. But you're right, they're big, they're bulky, and as a performer, you're conscientious of each and every part. How tall you are, how are you going to get through that door? How are you going to get over that barrier? Whatever it is. I mean, I've fallen downstairs by accident. I've done all sorts of stuff by accident. But knowing your surroundings, knowing who's watching you, and even on stage in costume, it's very, very difficult to see anything with the lights the way they are on stage. It's very difficult to see an audience, let alone the stage, because of the lighting when you're looking at a costume. Very, very challenging. So you have to know your surroundings. Definitely, safety was always number one, and how to bring the character to life is definitely a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. I've been at a couple of events where they've had the Paw Patrol characters, yep. Mm-hmm. And I always found it interesting that the character themselves seemed to be extremely well trained, whereas the people guarding the characters were the most unfriendly people I'd ever come in contact with. And I thought, note to that company, when they go out again, hire people who are watching out for the character for sure, because some of them, the costumes are really bulky, but also make sure that those people are trained to know that they are themselves performing, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And that is, and again, with that person that is with the character, I call it the elastic principle. Another principle about good supervision of the characters. The problem sometimes is that the attendant with the character gets distracted. So the character himself or herself may be looking one way, where when the attendant is maybe asking or answering a question from a young person. So there's a bit of a gap there. But in the training, you're trained to be the attendant and the character. They're trained to be like they're attached with a large elastic band. They're constantly going back and forth to see who's around. But they're also for safety reasons, but they're also a spokesperson. The character usually doesn't talk. I mean, I had to sing the Gumby song. He was once a little
green club of clay.
Gumby. So I had to sing that one time for a CBC show. But I very seldom spoke in costume, and there's reasons why characters generally don't speak. But
well, you can't hear them for one thing, and if you can, it's really muffled.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And also, once you start, you're trying to create an illusion of this character is real life. And once you start talking in a voice, then that becomes diminished because, to your point, it's very hard to get that voice from TV or radio or whatever exactly the same. That's very, very challenging to do. The one character that did a really, really great job at having a voice and projecting was BJ Birdie.
I loved the Blue Jay Birdie.
Yeah. The fella that did BJ Birdie, Kevin Shanahan, he was fantastic. He had a really loud voice. He got away with it, and he could talk to people the way that he wanted. I mean, having a voice did so many things. It provided some safety for him because he could tell people, don't pull my tail, don't pull my feathers or whatever. And it was loud and it was clear. He projected so well. But you're right. I mean, the attendant becomes the spokesperson for the character, and they are part of the show. It's a duet.
Yes,
and
it really is.
It is, and they have to play along, just like the character does. They've definitely got a role. both for safety and as spokesperson for not just the character, but so, for example, I was on a very long-term contract with Wrigley's. We had a character named Barkley the Beaver. He is a big, blue, beautiful, cuddly beaver, and you're not just in that case, and same with IKEA, the IKEA Moose, and same with Wrigley's, and same with Canadian Tire. You're not just representing the character, but you're representing the companies.
Mm-hmm.
These are corporations, and you need to be very careful. The TTC, that was a 13-year contract with Barney the Beaver. And again, you become a spokesperson. So that person who's with the character, definitely not just safety. Safety's number one for sure, but also they are the representative of the character, and more than that, the company that they're representing. So you're right. Great point.
Well, I must say I had many, many, many great Blue Jay experience with the Blue Jay Birdie. And
Yep.
I remember when someone did pull his tail and he instantly gathered up his tail from behind him.
Wow.
Put his other hand up and gave them the no, 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 no finger waving thing. And then
The finger waving thing.
then blew them a kiss. And the entire audience went stark raving crazy. People were laughing and clapping. He was really entertaining, I must
He
say.
was really good. And he really inspired me when I was first starting out in my career, and I wanted to be like BJ Birdie and whatnot. But the thing about BJ is that he owned BJ Birdie. He owned the right.
Really?
Oh yes, he owned BJ Birdie.
Uh-huh.
All of us, all of my business was all, it was all contract work. It was all, we normally would. I had a warehouse in Concord, and we would store costumes, and we would build them, and we would repair them, and hire and train the staff to wear them. But it was all contract. And then when BJ Birdie was not hired back, that's when they started. A lot of the sports teams changed, and they started to go the employee route. So when someone was hired, yes, you're hired to be the mascot, but you're also looking after our kids program and other types of community outreach in addition to being the character. So things changed when he left the Blue Jays, but he was great. He was a master. He was actually a master costume builder and just a great performer. And I know a lot of people still miss him for sure.
Mm-hmm. And there are some, there are costumes that are, and characters like you were saying, that are so cuddly that you do feel like running up and throwing your arms around them. And you look at some of the little kids and they're so tiny. They could actually walk between the legs of one of the mascots and not even hit their head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true.
But I guess you got to protect the kids and the person wearing the costume, because I'm sure the person wearing the costume, sometimes you can't even see your hands when your hands are down low because you don't have the vision to look straight down and things like that.
No, 100%. That is absolutely key. And part of the training is, I always train people to say, before you take a step, this is in costume, before you take a step in costume in any direction, you take a look down. I mean, your assistant is there to help you as well, but as a character, it's a team. And before you take a step in any direction, you have to look down. I mean, I remember very distinctly, it makes me sick to my stomach thinking about it now, but I remember there was a soft drink years ago in the 80s called Original New York Seltzer. And I was the original New York Seltzer bottle. And I had this appearance in a stadium in Vancouver. And this was one of the kinds of costumes where you needed a fan to prevent the eyes from fogging up. Well, this is well known that a lot of times those fans, the battery dies and the eyes start fogging up. And I remember going up these stairs, and it was very difficult for me to see. My eyes were totally fogged up. And I take a step and I feel something, and I'm kind of going up and down with my foot and going, what is that in my mind? What is that? Well, it happened to be a little baby in a little bassinet. I'm going, oh my gosh, really? I wasn't hitting the baby, but I was hitting the edge, and I could hear the crowd. And so very, very important to be careful. And that was one of the times perhaps I wasn't as careful as I should have been. And there was lots of occasions when I thought, boy, this is going to be really funny if I do this or that, and then it just gets me in trouble. It happened a lot of times. So
Yeah. Well, I can even see how, trying to get down on the ground in your costume if you're a turtle or if you're an animal, that is part of what you would normally do. And then once you're down there, how do you get up? Because you've got so much weight above your head and the costume's so cumbersome.
well, it's true. And my shtick was, it was all based on, a lot of it on the old silent movie stars, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, Harold Lloyd, and then the Three Stooges. But Buster Keaton, for instance, I would look at his old movies in slow motion when he took a fall, and he taught me how to fall on my back without getting hurt, and where my arms are supposed to go, and how my legs go. But you're right. Domer the Turtle, for instance, I would always be falling on my back and always be. So all my stuff was slapstick and silly and going downstairs, falling downstairs without getting hurt and walking into doors and things. But I remember one event at Sky Dome, I fell. I went down on my stomach as Domer the Turtle. And it looks funny to see this flat turtle in the middle of Sky Dome on the floor. And anyway, the U of T has a band, the Lady Godiva band, I think it's called. And anyway, if they didn't start piling up on top of my shell, one after the other, and it would have been another second or two before I could not get another breath of air. It was just sucking the air right out of me. So, you just have to be careful sometimes. And there's lots of times that I can remember where I wasn't as careful as I could have been. But I don't remember ever really. The person that got hurt the most was me. Let's put it that way. So,
Which matters.
which matters. It matters.
Absolutely.
It matters. Yeah,
Domer the Turtle matters.
And parades, for instance, we did hundreds of parades. I was in the Toronto Santa Claus parade, I don't know how many times, but parades are a different beast. They're my favorite type of event to do, but they were the hardest to do because you can't hide. You're in a parade for up to 3 hours, or in a costume for up to 3 hours, when normally you're in costume 20 minutes to half an hour at a time. So parades were always quite grueling, and I know that I always knew when I was overdoing it, and my electrolytes were getting low, when I started to get very irritable in costume, and no one would know because you're continuing to wave back and forth to the crowd and what have you, but inside you're suffering. So you definitely have to take care of yourself. But I've had all my both legs cramp up and pulled muscles and fainted twice. I fainted in costume twice over about 8,000 appearances. Yeah. So you just have to be careful, and it takes a toll.
Well, we have to take our first little break here on Fresh Waves. We will be back right after this, so stay tuned. Our guest today is Russ Horner, and I'm your host, Bren Masson. We'll be right back. Hi, I'm Bren Masson, host of Fresh Waves. If you'd like to hear this broadcast again, why don't you check out our YouTube page, Fresh Waves Radio. You can click subscribe, and then you can hear all of the Fresh Waves podcasts. We love to hear from you as well, so you can contact me at bren@freshwaves.ca. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the show. We're back on Fresh Waves. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and today we're speaking with Russ Horner. Russ was a mascot. He did all kinds of characters and performed at the Olympics in Vancouver and the Sky Dome and all kinds of fantastic places. And Russ, one day you decided to give that all up and scan pictures. Tell us how that came about.
Well, it didn't happen so all of a sudden. But basically, I've been self-employed my entire career, since I left Wonderland in the early 80s. I've been self-employed with a few longer-term contracts, but still self-employed. And so basically, my philosophy for the past 40 years has been, whatever I like to do, whatever my passions are, I want to try and turn them into a business. That's really what it comes down to. And even with the characters and mascots, in order for me to make money, I had to learn how to sew. So I learned how to sew, and I got my 2 industrial sewing machines. And learning that and love to do it, I made some money from that. Similarly, with descriptive scanning and the digitizing of photos and films and negatives and documents, whatnot, that started. I've always had a passion for personal history within my own family. And one of the things that I always wished for was that my grandparents and even great grandparents um, had more things, more documents, more diaries, more pictures and letters that I could read and find out about. And so in 1996, I came up with an idea uh, of my cousin and I hiked the West Coast Trail in 1996. And in the meantime, I'd already started another business, a graphic design business, where we did a lot of scanning and things. So technically, I was gaining experience to what I didn't know was coming up in my future. But the passion was always there. And in 1996, when my cousin and I hiked the West Coast Trail, I had a dictaphone with me, and instead of writing a diary, I recorded. I recorded a whole campfire one night. I recorded the party at the pub before we left, and then along this trail, this 75-kilometer trail, I did recordings every night and during the day and whatnot. And when I got back from that West Coast Trail in Vancouver or BC, I transcribed verbatim that entire those all of those recordings. It was about a 30-page document, and transcribed it verbatim with all the ums and ahs, and I didn't identify who said what, but it, that's what it was. It was a document, and that really got me thinking about. I love this. I love this recording this personal history, which started out with my own. So I started to do a little. Set up a little hobby business where I would interview people. Let's say a couple was getting married, and I'd interview them, and I would get a couple pictures of them, and then I would transcribe that interview verbatim with a few pictures. And in 2015, I actually started the business and it was called You Verbatim. That's the business. And a good friend of mine, his name is Mike Filey, and he's a Toronto historian, and I told him about this business that I started, You Verbatim, and he knows a lot of people in the Toronto history world, and he has a lot of fans that used to love to read his articles about Toronto history, and he supported me in that, and set me up with a few people, and I just found it. You're much better at it than I am. I like answering questions, but I love interviewing people, but I couldn't make it into a business. So, but I still had this passion for personal history. So I decided, with the technical experience that I'd already gained through my graphic design business and print brokering business, through scanning all of my grandparents and parents' slides and films, thousands and thousands of them, I decided that I would start doing that. And when I started to really do it for other people, scanning and digitizing, that really fulfilled that incredible personal passion I had for personal histories. Every project I get satisfies. I just look at I'm looking at them right now while I'm talking to you. I'm looking at a project I'm working at, these old farm photos from the 1920s from Caledon and the Bolton area, of the old cars, the old boats. Amazing. It totally fulfills that. I also do in-home scanning. So I've done some two diaries that the client did not want them to leave the home. So I went to their home and I did it in their home. They're so valuable. They're so personal. And for me, I eat it up. I love these personal histories. They're not mine, but it doesn't matter. It's the passion. It's something that I've always loved, and truly, I think it probably stemmed from my own grandparents, who they were always fun, and they love those old movies that I like to listen to, and the old music. And so there's nostalgia that's always been there in me from my own family. but it grew over the years, and I wanted to capture more of it personally. And then, how do I make it into a business? Because that's the way my mind works. And so when I do this work, I love it. It's a real passion, and which is why I like to go. And I do have a lot of clients. I don't know why I have so many clients in Stouffville, but I do have a lot. And I go. I don't charge for pickup and delivery. I find people. I like the fact that people see me when I go to their door to pick these items up. That they need to trust that someone is going to do a good job. They're going to come back to me safely, and they're going to be personally delivered back. I like that. For me, if it was me, that's what I would like. And every job, every photo, every film, I look at them and I go, that's what I would like to get back. And if I can say, yes, that's what I like to get back, then off it goes to the client. So it stems from a personal passion for personal history, and that's how it got started. It's morphed over time, but this is where it landed, and this is where it will stay because it's a very deep-rooted passion for sure.
Well, it's kind of interesting. Here you are with somebody's most prized photographs, and you must end up inevitably knowing all kinds of things about people. I mean, you go to give their photos back and you think, oh yeah, that one over there, that's great Aunt Esther, I can see her. Because you already know her because you've just scanned all these photographs with these people in it.
Well, it's really, really true. And I don't usually comment. So when I do deliver, I don't normally comment. When videos are running, I mean, I have 7 video stations running sometimes. I can't watch all the videos. I have to edit them, and I do have to listen to see where they're at. But I can't really sit and listen to them at kind of a normal speed. But you're absolutely right. You do get to know a family, and you see them growing up. You're delivering to people that were I've just seen 100 pictures of you as a baby and a teenager and your first date and whatever else, and your marriage and so on and so forth. And that is the beauty of this business. And the greatest joy that I get out of it is when I deliver. It doesn't happen all the time. But I offer to most of the product is most of the pictures and videos are put on either an external hard drive or a small memory stick. And I offer, and a lot of my clients, they don't know about memory sticks or anything like that. I try and make it as simple as possible. And I explain that you can put this little memory stick in the back of your TV. And I'm more than happy to show you how to do that. It all comes down to trust as well, if they're comfortable with that. And a lot of times they've got kids or grandkids that can help them with that, and that's totally fine. But I offer that, and it does happen. And there's nothing greater for me to deliver a project, stick that memory stick in the back of the TV, and sit on the couch with them, with the family that hasn't seen these pictures in 50 years. And to see them on the TV where you can see so much more detail, and you can, on your computer, you can zoom in and find things that you never noticed before. That is the greatest joy, because I don't see the reaction except at that time. But I know that these have been locked away. These pictures have been locked away usually for many, many years. The videos and the old movies people haven't seen for decades because they don't have the means anymore to view the old films. They don't have the projector. They don't even have the VCRs anymore to see VHS tapes. They don't have the camcorders anymore. So sometimes I get that great joy for me where I can actually see them enjoying these items that they haven't seen their parents or grandparents or even great grandparents before. And so that's the greatest part of the job for sure, is getting them delivered, but also seeing them after they're delivered.
That's absolutely fascinating. So tell me about some of the things that you offer. Like you can scan photos.
Yeah, so paper photos. So generally speaking, paper photos, um, slides, negatives, uh, documents, books, and then in terms of the films, the 8 millimeter or Super 8 films, any kind of camcorder tape. So the mini DVs, 8 millimeter, high 8, digital 8, and then the VHS tapes. And then yeah, so we're yeah, most things. Those are the basic things, and the real premise for me is keeping it as simple as possible. The formats that I return are very simple, usually JPEGs. Um, if that means anything to people, usually JPEGs for photographs and MP4s for any kind of movie or film. I do get requests. Right now, I'm doing a project with a museum out of BC, actually. Um, and there are these very special documents from the early teens that some families have. And this museum curator is collecting them to do a show. So I'm actually going to these people's homes to digitize one document, but they're scanned at a very high resolution and they're saved in a different format. So it all depends, but for the most part, I want people just to uh, save them because I know that films are deteriorating and things get lost in moves and things like that. The important thing is just get them done. And I try and make that process as simple as possible and not complicate things with a lot of different, formats and things. I do scan them at a higher resolution than normal, let's say, but still, these are things that if I like it, then hopefully you will like it because I've done a lot of it, and I know what I like, and I'm fairly normal and average person, and in my taste for records, and my bet is that most people like what I do.
Well, I'm sure they would. I think your attention to detail is second to none. So from what I see so far, I'm happy to send my photos your way. Now, one of the things that you had mentioned that I thought was very interesting, and I've never thought of digitizing before, is letters.
Letters, yes, yes. So a couple things about that. I just finished a project where it was not just letters, but they were Christmas cards. Uh, first babies born. This was from a family in the 50s, and they had all these beautiful. The artwork on these older cards are absolutely beautiful. So they wanted their baby cards scanned, but it's not out of the ordinary to have their Christmas cards scanned as well. So I just finished a project that had a lot of Christmas cards, and in these Christmas cards were a lot of notes to the person that received the card. So there's a lot of history there for sure. And then we have done a number of letters. The biggest one that I've done was from a family in Thornhill. The lady, her grandfather was a U.S. GI during the war, and he met a girl from Toronto at a New York nightclub in the early 40s, and they started dating. And these letters were the complete collection of letters from when they first met and afterwards, all the way to the end of the war. He left to go overseas to England and France and served over there. And she stayed in Toronto. And it was 324 letters from this GI to his girlfriend in Toronto. So
Wow.
we had to scan. I had extra people help me with this for sure. But not only was every letter scanned, but also the envelope was scanned. And then they wanted every letter transcribed. It was a huge project. But there's a great example of history that will be shared for generations to come. Incredible, incredible project. And she actually asked me, said, Russ, in going through these letters, was there anything that stood out? So I started making even my own little notes of interesting historical things. Um, something like he mentioned about going to see a Glenn Miller concert, and the date of that was 2 months before he actually was killed. So that stood out. The peace that he, when the war was over, he was in France and he went to this huge celebration, and then they called for silence to remember those that passed. And geez, I'm starting to well up now talking about it. But just the peace, the silence that bestowed all of Paris when those moments took place. So those are absolutely fascinating. But the big thing for me is that people do this now. And not everybody, believe it or not everybody believes in digitizing and saving photos and films and documents and letters. A lot of them don't believe it. But if anyone is like me, and I consider myself a very average person, everyday person, but there will be someone in the future that will say, why didn't Aunt Bren digitize all of these great letters and photos? She has an amazing background, because I know nothing about her. And I think that would be a shame if someone in a future generation didn't know their Aunt Bren. And because there will be someone that will wish that with all the technology around, that someone didn't do that. So it is quite fascinating, I got to say.
It must be. I know that the reason I asked you about the letters is because through my hunt and find with my dad's stuff, I came across a letter that was written to my grandmother from one of the soldiers that was with my dad's brother before he died. He was shot down over Copenhagen. And he'd written to my grandmother and said, I apologize for sending this so late. I just wanted you to know that we knew Eugene, and Eugene was a great guy, and told her a couple of stories about Eugene and how much he was liked by the other guys and how much they missed him and everything. That letter meant so much to my grandmother. And I would like my kids to know that, so that on Remembrance Day, when they can't really relate to World War II, they can relate to the fact that their great uncle was killed, and he was a really good guy. If nothing else, he was a really good guy.
Absolutely.
And I do apologize again for the noise in the background.
That's okay.
I can't control what happens in the outside world. This is part of the fun of recording at home now because of the pandemic. So.
Well, that's okay. Well, those war records are incredibly important, and it's one of the reasons why I got involved in at our local Legion in Richmond Hill. I've been with them for over 5 years now, 6 years, and the pandemic caused me to stop my Friday night karaoke at the Legion, which I did for 4 years, every Friday night. But anybody that has a photo of a family member who's a veteran, I am more than happy. They just have to send it to me. I'm more than happy to fix it up, and I do that for no charge. That's on my website. And I have done a lot of them. People send me photos, and I'm happy of their veteran. It might be one lady in Richmond Hill. She's 100 years old, and there's a picture of her husband, the only picture that she has of her husband in uniform, and it's one of those large squadron photos where the picture is so small, and she hasn't seen her husband for years in that picture. He passed away years ago. So I was able to fix the photo, bring out that one picture of him, and now she can see her husband that she hasn't seen for many, many years in uniform. So it happens a lot, and I'm happy to do that. But it's one of those reasons why I wanted to be part of the Legion, just because of so many personal stories and the sacrifice. And it's a great day to be talking about this. And that letter that you have, that's really important. And there's not many letters that you probably have like that. And it's worth protecting in any way that you have. Sure.
Yeah, because if you just photocopy it, those photocopy inks, they fade with time. And before you know it, the photocopy's no good anymore. And no one in the family knows where the original was. My dad made a little note at the bottom that said, my cousin Bill has the original, so if anyone's looking for it, that's where you'll find it. And I think it's really important that I'm going to include that now in the pictures, and I wouldn't have until you and I spoke. I would never have even thought of putting that letter in there. And my sister moved away. She moved when she got married. She married a guy from a different country. She lives over there now, overseas. And she would write to my parents, and she wrote every other week sort of thing. And when I was going through the stuff and sorting it all out, I realized that those letters are actually a diary of her life, and that
Wow.
my mom can now look back on those letters as a diary of what transpired over the years with her grandkids. And so I offered to send them back to my sister because they read like a diary, and she's keen to get them back. But before I do, I'm going to digitize them.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Why not?
No, for sure. It's part of the story, part of the history. And I find not just letters, but a lot of people, I get a lot of audio tapes, cassette tapes. And just like I did on that West Coast trail trip, a lot of people have those original, their kids when they were babies in the 40s, 50s, 60s, when they just had a tape recorder. They didn't have VHS tapes or anything like that. I do have a lot of audio recordings that I digitize as well, because they are like diaries. They do talk in, and it's the first voices of their kids or whatever it is. Christmas time. There's lots of different events on those audio tapes as well. But letters are important, very, very important.
They really are. Now we're coming up. Sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that it's also important to share. So once people get that USB back, it is very, very important to share that, to email, to make other copies, and give them to other family members to help secure that document just doesn't live on one memory stick or one computer. It's shared amongst family members and friends, and so it's always around somewhere.
Yeah, I think that's important too. And what I was going to say is that it's Christmas time coming up, and what a beautiful gift to give to somebody, a lifetime of memories on photographs, letters, whatever. I think it'd be a wonderful gift.
Great gift. Absolutely a great gift. Yes.
Well, Russ, if people want to get a hold of you to digitize their belongings, how do they do that?
Well, they can go on the website. Descriptive Scanning is the name of the business. Or if they just want to put in photo scanning or something like that, usually my name pops up. There is a 1833 number, 833. Oh, geez, isn't that funny? I just forget it right off the top of my head.
833-722-6464.
You got it. Thank you very much. And there's my email address as well, or you can contact me right through the website as well. So.
All right. Well, that's terrific. Thank you so much for talking to us today. I've really enjoyed having you on the show, and I hope that we'll have you on the show again.
I hope so. Brenda, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today.
It's been a lot of fun. Well, that's it for Fresh Waves today. We've had a great show. If you missed any part of this and you'd like to hear it again, you can always go to YouTube, Fresh Waves Radio, and hit subscribe so that you can always hear the wonderful Fresh Waves podcasts. Have a great day, everyone. Be kind to one another and take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.